At my mother's funeral, I tried to find a quiet moment alone with my grief, but then I overheard my aunt whispering on the phone. "She's gone," she said, her voice a cold, relieved whisper. "The secret is safe now." Her words led me to a hidden box of letters, and a secret so profound it would rewrite my entire life. The woman who raised me wasn't my mother. This is a story about a family secret that was kept for over 20 years. Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments. And be sure to subscribe for more stories every single day. Okay, let's go back to that funeral. The day we buried my mother, the sky wept with a cold, persistent November rain. The world felt muted, a landscape of gray and black, a perfect mirror for the profound, hollow ache in my own chest. My mother, Rebecca, had been my entire world. She was my confidant, my champion, my best friend. Her death from a sudden illness had been a thief in the night, stealing the one constant, shining light of my life. The funeral was a blur of sympathetic faces, murmured condolences, and the cloying, heavy scent of too many white lilies. I stood in the receiving line, my hand in my father's, a ghost in a black dress, accepting hugs from people whose names I couldn't remember. And I watched my aunt, Victoria. She was my mother's younger sister, and she was a puzzle I had never been able to solve. While my mother had been all warmth and laughter and comforting hugs, my aunt was a creature of cold, polished elegance. Her grief, if she felt any, was hidden behind a mask of perfect, stoic composure. She greeted the guests with a cool, formal grace. Our entire lives, she had treated me with a strange, distant chill. Her gifts for my birthday were always impersonal, expensive things sent by mail. Her hugs were stiff and brief. I had spent my childhood and most of my adult life believing that there was something wrong with me, that I had somehow failed to earn the love of my own aunt. Overwhelmed by the crush of grieving faces, I finally excused myself. I found a small, unused family room off the main chapel, a quiet, dimly lit space where I could just breathe. I sank into an old armchair, the silence a welcome relief, and I finally let the tears I had been holding back all day fall. I was crying silently into my hands when I heard the door to the room creak open. I quickly wiped my eyes, not wanting to be seen in my moment of weakness, but no one entered. I peeked through the crack in the armchair's wingback and saw my aunt, Victoria, slip into the room. She thought it was empty. She pulled out her cell phone, her back to me, and made a call, her voice a low, urgent whisper that cut through the silence. "It's me," she whispered. "Yes, the service is almost over." No, she was peaceful at the end. She paused, listening. "Listen," she said, her voice dropping even lower, becoming more intense. "The most important thing is that she never told her. I spoke to the lawyer this morning. The will is simple. There are no letters, no last-minute confessions. Nothing is mentioned." Another pause. "Yes, you heard me. After all these years, the secret is safe. It died with her." She listened for another moment, then hung up, and with a strange, shuddering sigh that I couldn't decipher, she slipped back out of the room, never knowing I was there. I sat there, frozen in the armchair, my own grief now completely overshadowed by a cold, creeping sense of confusion and dread. What secret? Told who? Told me? The words echoed in my mind. It was a secret that involved my mother, a secret so important that its safety was the first thing my aunt thought of at her own sister's funeral. The rest of the day passed in a fog, but the seed of my aunt's secret had been planted, and it began to grow, its roots twisting around the foundations of everything I had ever known. The following weekend, I was tasked with the heartbreaking job of clearing out my mother's house, the house I had grown up in. I moved through the silent rooms, every object a memory, every corner filled with her ghost. I was in her bedroom, sorting through the clothes in her closet, the familiar scent of her lavender perfume all around me, when my hand brushed against something that didn't feel right. A loose floorboard, hidden under the thick pile of the closet carpet. My heart began to pound. I pried the board up with my fingers, and there, in the dark, hollow space beneath, was a small, locked wooden box. A memory box. My mother's. I found the small key for it later, in the back of her jewelry box. I sat on the floor of her closet, my hands trembling, and I opened the box. Inside was a lifetime of secrets. Old, faded photographs of a young, carefree Victoria, arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize. And beneath the photos, a thick bundle of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. They were letters between my mother and my Aunt Victoria, their familiar handwriting a testament to a time before I was born. My mother saw a box of her old things that needed to be sorted, but as my fingers closed around the cool, brittle paper of the first letter, I knew I was holding something else entirely. I was holding a story, and I had the terrible, certain feeling that it was a story my family did not want told. I sat on the floor of my mother's closet, the scent of her perfume a comforting, ghostly presence all around me. The small wooden box in my lap felt heavier than it should, as if it contained not just paper, but the condensed weight of a lifetime of unspoken words. My grief was a raw, open wound, and yet another feeling was beginning to push through it. A sharp, almost fearful curiosity. My aunt's words at the funeral, "The secret is safe now, it died with her," had been a key, turning a lock on a door I never even knew existed. And I knew, with a certainty that was as profound as my own sorrow, that the answers were here, in this box. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. The box was filled with what looked like any other collection of a life's memories. Faded photographs, a few pieces of old, tarnished jewelry, a child's first lost tooth wrapped in tissue paper. But at the very bottom, tied with a faded blue ribbon that likely once was vibrant, was a thick bundle of letters. The envelopes were old, the paper soft and brittle with age. I recognized the handwriting on the top envelope immediately. It was my mother, Rebecca's familiar, comforting script. But it was addressed to her sister, my Aunt Victoria. I untied the ribbon, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm in my chest. I pulled out the first letter. It was dated more than 25 years ago. I began to read.
And with the first few sentences, the woman I knew as my mother began to transform. This was not the calm, steady, and sometimes sad woman who had raised me. This was a young woman, her words a torrent of frantic, hopeful, and loving energy. A woman in the middle of a conspiracy born of sisterly love. "Dearest Vicky," the first letter began, "the plan is in motion. I've told Mother and Father that my doctor has confirmed the miracle we were praying for. They are ecstatic. No one suspects a thing. Are you all right? Are you eating enough? The doctor I found for you in the city is the best. He is discreet. You're safe there. Just focus on staying healthy, my brave, brave sister. I will handle everything else here." My mind reeled. What plan? What miracle? I read the next letter, this one in my aunt's handwriting, a script I barely recognized. Younger, more emotional, less controlled than the cold, precise signature I knew from my birthday checks. "Becca," she wrote, the ink slightly smeared. "I am so terrified. Every day I wake up and I think, what have I done? He says he loves me, but he cannot be with me. My life is ruined. My only hope is you. Is this really going to work? Can we really do this?" I read on, my breath catching in my throat, as the letters, a frantic, whispered conversation across time and distance, began to reveal the full, heartbreaking scope of their secret. My aunt, my cold, distant, and perpetually single Aunt Victoria, had fallen desperately in love as a young woman. It was a forbidden love, a relationship with a man their strict, conservative parents would have never approved of, and she had gotten pregnant. The letters detailed her panic, her shame, her certainty that she would be disowned, cast out, her life destroyed. And then they detailed the incredible, audacious, and profoundly loving plan hatched by my mother, Rebecca. Rebecca, who, as I read in her own tear-stained words, had just been told by her doctors that she was infertile, that she would never be able to have a child of her own. "This is not a tragedy, Vicky," my mother had written. "This is a gift for both of us. You will have your baby, safe and loved, and I will have the child I have so desperately prayed for. You will go away for the year, to the art program I have arranged for you in the city, and when you return, I will have a new baby, my baby, our baby. We will raise her together, as sisters, as a family. It will be our secret, our promise." The sacrifice. It was not mine. It was theirs. A shared, secret, and life-altering sacrifice. The final letters were the most painful of all. They were written in the weeks and months after my birth. They were full of Rebecca's overwhelming, boundless joy and my aunt's profound, heartbreaking grief. "She is so beautiful, Vicky. She has your eyes. I hold her and my heart feels like it might burst. Thank you. Thank you for this gift." And my aunt's reply, the last one in the bundle, was a single, tear-stained page. "I cannot do this, Becca. I came to see her yesterday and I watched you with her. You are her mother. You are the only mother she should ever know. To be near her, to see her, and to not be able to claim her, it is a pain I cannot bear. It is better if I keep my distance. It is better if she thinks of me only as your cold, distant aunt. It is the only way I can survive this. Please forgive me, and love her. Love her enough for both of us."
I closed the last letter, my body racked with a storm of emotions I had no name for. I was a child of two mothers, one who had loved me so much that she had raised me as her own, and one who had loved me so much that she had given me away. The 25 years of my aunt's coldness, the distance I had always blamed myself for, was not rejection. It was a shield to protect her own broken heart. My grief for the mother I had just buried was now compounded by a new, more complex grief for the mother who was still alive, the one I had never known. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from her, from Victoria. Her tone was as cold and as businesslike as ever. "Ivy, I have spoken with the realtor. We need to have a final family meeting at the house tomorrow to discuss the logistics of the sale. Please be there at 10. I looked at the cold, impersonal text on my phone and then at the passionate, grieving, and loving words of the young girl in the letters spread out on the floor around me. They were the same woman. Tomorrow, she wanted to have a business meeting to sell the house where my story, our story, had begun. She had no idea that I had just spent the last 2 hours reading her heart. She had no idea that her secret was no longer safe. And she had no idea that I was about to confront her, not as her niece, but as the daughter she had given away. The next morning, I woke up in my mother's, in Rebecca's bed, the bundle of letters resting beside me on the pillow like a sacred text. The world felt fundamentally altered, as if the very color of the sky had changed. The grief I felt was no longer simple. It was a complex, layered thing. I was mourning the loss of the woman who had raised me, but I was also mourning the loss of a life, a truth I had never known. And beneath the grief, a new, hard, and unshakable resolve was beginning to form. My aunt, my mother, Victoria, was expecting me to show up for a business meeting, a discussion about asset liquidation. I was going to give her a reckoning instead. I didn't plan a grand theatrical reveal. My heart was too heavy for that. I just needed the truth to be spoken aloud, to exist in the air between us, no longer a secret buried in a dusty box. I chose one letter from the bundle, the last one Victoria had written, the one that was so full of a raw, agonizing grief. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. It was my only weapon. I found them in the living room. Victoria was, as her text had suggested, all business. She had a clipboard and was talking animatedly to a real estate agent, discussing market values and staging strategies. A few other relatives, my uncle and a cousin, were there as well, looking on with a kind of vague, predatory interest. They were all treating my mother's home, my childhood home, like a simple commodity, a final asset to be divided up. They were erasing her, and I, it seemed, was the only one who had a problem with it. "Ah, Ivy, there you are," Victoria said, her voice brisk and impatient as she saw me. "Good, we can get started. The agent thinks we should list it by the end of the month." "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. The real estate agent, the other relatives, they all stopped talking and turned to look at me. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "What did you say?"
I said no, I repeated, my voice stronger this time. I walked further into the room, my gaze locked on hers. "We're not going to talk about selling this house. Not yet. Before we talk about any of that, I think we need to talk about what really happened in it." A flicker of something, fear, annoyance, crossed her face. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, her voice cold. "If you're going to be emotional and difficult, perhaps you should leave this to the adults." "I am an adult," I replied, my voice still quiet, still calm. "And I have a question for you, Victoria." I took a step closer, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my resolve was a block of ice. "I need you to tell me. Was it hard?" "Was what hard?" she snapped, her composure beginning to crack. "For 25 years, I said, my voice now a low, intense whisper. Was it hard to see me? To be in the same room with me at every Christmas, at every birthday? To watch me grow up and to have to pretend that I was just your niece?" The color drained from her face. I saw her hand, the one holding the clipboard, begin to tremble. She knew. She knew that I knew. "I don't know what kind of insane fantasy you've cooked up in your head, Ivy," she stammered, her eyes darting around at the confused faces of her other relatives. "You've been under a lot of stress. Your mother's passing. This isn't about my grief. This is about yours." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single, folded, and brittle letter. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I just held it up between us. "I found your letters, Victoria," I said simply. "The ones you wrote to Rebecca. All of them. I know everything." The fight went out of her in an instant. Her cold, defensive posture collapsed, and she sank onto the arm of a nearby sofa, her face a ruin of a secret she had carried for a quarter of a century. The other relatives just stared, their mouths agape, as the entire, unspoken history of our family began to unravel before their very eyes. I looked at her, at this woman who was my mother, the stranger, and I saw not the cold, distant aunt I had known my whole life, but the terrified, heartbroken young girl from the letters. The secret was out. It was no longer safe. It was no longer hers to carry alone. And as I stood there, the letter still in my hand, I knew that the first, terrifying, and brutally honest conversation between a mother and the daughter she had been forced to give away was about to begin. The living room, which had been a place of business just moments before, was now a silent, frozen courtroom. The single, folded letter lay on the coffee table between my Aunt Victoria and me. It was not a weapon of aggression. It was a simple, undeniable statement of fact. Her own words, her own handwriting, her own heartbreaking secret held in my hand.
My other relatives, my uncle and a cousin, stared, their faces a mask of utter, uncomprehending confusion. "What is this, Victoria? What secret? What is Ivy talking about?" Victoria looked at me, her face a ruin. The cold, polished mask of the woman I had known my whole life had completely shattered. In her place was the face of a terrified, heartbroken young girl from the letters. "This is a private matter," she hissed, her voice a ragged whisper. "It is between me and my niece. It is none of your concern."
"No," I said, my own voice quiet but firm, finding a strength I didn't know I possessed. "It's not. It was a family secret. And this family," I said, my gaze sweeping over all of them, "is done with secrets." I looked back at Victoria, at the woman who was my mother. "Tell them," I said. It was not a request, it was a plea. "Or I will." And so she did. The story, when it came, did not come in a rush. It came in broken, fragmented pieces, the words torn from her as if from a deep, unhealed wound. She told them of a life I had never known, a life from a time before me. She spoke of a young, forbidden love with a man my grandparents would have never approved of. She spoke of the heady, reckless joy of that love and of the sudden, life-altering terror of an unplanned pregnancy in a time and a family where such a thing was a mark of absolute, unforgivable shame. She spoke of her sister, my mother, Rebecca. She spoke of Rebecca's own secret heartbreak, a diagnosis of infertility, the quiet death of her own dream of motherhood. And she spoke of the desperate, loving, and insane pact the two sisters had made in the quiet of a long-ago night, a plan to save one sister from shame and the other from childlessness. "She was supposed to be our baby," she whispered, her eyes now looking at something far away, a memory from 25 years ago. "We were going to raise her together, as sisters, a secret, happy family of 3. She let out a short, bitter, heartbreaking laugh. It was the beautiful, naive plan of 2 young women who had no idea about the true cost of a secret. She told them of the pain, the unbearable, soul-crushing pain of giving her own child to her sister to raise, the agony of watching me grow up, of hearing me call another woman mommy. She explained her own coldness, her distance, as not a lack of love, but a desperate, clumsy defense mechanism. "How could I get close?" she sobbed, tears now streaming down her pale cheeks. "How could I hold you? How could I play with you, knowing that I could never, ever tell you the truth? Every time you smiled at me, it was a knife in my heart, so I stayed away. I built a wall. It was the only way I could survive seeing you every day." I listened to her story, and the anger, the feeling of betrayal I had felt began to dissolve, replaced by a new, complex, and overwhelming wave of empathy. My entire life I had believed her to be a cold, unfeeling monster. But she was not a monster. She was a mother, a grieving mother who had been trapped in an impossible situation for a quarter of a century. The 25 years of her rejection, the rejection I had always blamed myself for, was not about me at all. It was about her own unbearable secret pain. When she finished, the room was silent once more, but this time it was a silence thick with a new, shared, and tragic understanding. My uncle and cousin just stared, their own minds clearly reeling as the entire history of their family was rewritten before their very eyes. I finally walked over and sat down on the sofa beside her, beside my mother. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to the woman who is both a stranger and the source of your own life? "Why?" I finally whispered, the one question that remained. "Why did you never tell me?" "After Grandpa and Grandma passed away, after the danger was gone." She looked at me then, her eyes, my eyes, full of a lifetime of regret. "Because it was too late," she whispered. "Too much time had passed. Rebecca was your mother.
in every way that truly mattered. She raised you. She loved you. She was there for you. To tell you the truth would have felt like a betrayal of her, of the incredible, selfless gift she gave me. And her voice broke again. I was a coward. It was easier to be the cold, distant aunt than to face the daughter I had given away. I looked at the letter in my hand, then at the broken woman beside me. She was right. Rebecca was my mother, but this woman, this stranger, was my mother too. And in that moment, in the middle of this room filled with moving boxes and the ghosts of our shared secret past, a new, terrifying, and profoundly uncertain future began to open up before us. The realtor, who had been waiting awkwardly in the hallway for the entire agonizing hour, finally poked his head in. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a jarring intrusion of normalcy. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we do have a buyer who is waiting for a final decision on the sale of the house." The sale of the house. The business meeting. It seemed like a ridiculous, trivial thing now. We all looked at him, then at each other. The house was no longer just a house. It was a monument to a secret pact between two sisters. It was the only home I had ever known, and it was the last tangible connection to the woman who had raised me. The secrets were out. The lies were dead. But as we stood there in the shell of my childhood home, surrounded by the wreckage of our family's history, I realized the hard part wasn't over. Uncovering the past was one thing. Deciding on a future, together, was a completely different story. The realtor's question, so mundane, so practical, was a jarring intrusion into the raw, sacred space of our shattered family history. About the sale of the house, he was a man from the outside world, a world of contracts and commissions, and he had no idea he was standing on the hallowed ground of a 50-year-old pact between two sisters. My uncle was the first to recover. "Yes," he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too eager to return to the simple, uncomplicated world of money. "The offer is a good one. We should accept it and be done with this." But I looked at Victoria, my mother. She was still sitting on the sofa, her face a pale, tear-streaked ruin, but her eyes were on me. They were full of a question, a plea. This was not a business decision anymore. It was a moral one. "No," I said, my voice quiet but with a newfound weight that made everyone, even the realtor, turn to look at me. "The house is not for sale." "What?" my uncle sputtered. "Ivy, be reasonable. It's the sensible thing to do. The money." "This isn't about money," I said, my gaze still locked with Victoria's. "This house, it was my mother's home. It was Rebecca's home. It's the only thing I have left of her. And," I took a deep breath, "it is the place where you two," I looked at Victoria, "made a promise to each other. It is not an asset to be liquidated. It is a legacy, and it is not for sale." The decision was made. It was my first act as the keeper of this new, complex truth. I had claimed my history. The weeks that followed were a slow, awkward, and painful navigation of a new world. The other relatives were furious about the lost sale, but their anger was a distant, unimportant noise. The only thing that mattered was the tentative, fragile, and terrifying new relationship that was beginning to form between me and Victoria. We started with coffee, in neutral cafes in the city, away from the ghosts of the family home. Our first conversations were stilted, awkward, filled with the vast, echoing silence of 25 years of unspoken words. She was not the cold, confident matriarch I had known. She was a woman riddled with a lifetime of guilt and regret. And I was not just her niece anymore. I was a walking, breathing reminder of her greatest love and her greatest loss. Slowly, painfully, she began to tell me her story. She told me about my biological father, a brilliant, passionate, but penniless artist her parents had forbidden her from seeing. She told me about the shame and the terror of her teenage pregnancy. And she told me, with tears streaming down her face, about the profound, selfless love of her sister, Rebecca, who had offered her a lifeline, a way to save her child from a life of shame. "She was the strong one," Victoria whispered, staring into her cold cup of coffee. "I was a coward. I ran away. I thought keeping my distance would be easier, that it would hurt less, but it didn't. It hollowed me out. There has been a hole in my life for 25 years, Ivy, and it is shaped exactly like you." In return, I told her about Rebecca. I told her about the woman who had raised me, about her kindness, her patience, her quiet, unwavering love. I showed her pictures, I shared memories. I gave her the gift of the daughter she had never known, through the eyes of the sister she had lost. We were two strangers, trying to build a bridge across a chasm of secrets, using the memories of the woman we had both loved as our foundation. A year after the funeral, we stood together in the attic of my mother's house, the house I had fought to keep. The moving boxes were gone, the dust sheets had been removed. It was just a quiet, peaceful home again. I had brought the wooden box of their letters up from the closet. We sat on the floor, side by side, and we read them together, our own history laid out before us. We cried for the two young, scared girls who had made an impossible choice. We cried for the years that had been lost. My family was not the simple, black-and-white story I had always believed. It was a complex, messy, and tragic novel full of flawed, loving, and heartbroken characters. I no longer had one mother, I had two. One who loved me so much that she had sacrificed her own body and her own child to give her sister a family, and one who loved me so much that she had sacrificed her own heart to give me a normal, happy life. I had not been abandoned. I had been doubly and profoundly loved, and that, I realized, was a secret worth waiting a lifetime to discover. An absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking story about the incredible sacrifices we make for family and the healing power of the truth. What do you think of the pact the two sisters made? Let us know your thoughts on this complex and emotional story in the comments below. If you were moved by this incredible story, please show your support by hitting that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more powerful and thought-provoking stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.